As many of you know, on this channel, I talk a lot about thought leadership. And in this episode, we're really going to be focusing on how podcast guesting can be a great way to build your thought leadership. And I've got a guest with me for this episode, Melanie Benson. She is the subject matter expert on podcast guesting. I'm real excited to really pick her brain. So by the end of this episode, you'll know if podcast guesting is right for you. Let's dive right in. All right, so let's start with the basics, Melanie. What would you say is podcast guesting? What is it?
Yeah. Well, let's first say a podcast is typically an audio interview or piece of content that you listen to that inspires you, teaches you, maybe even causes you to relate to the host. And podcast guesting is when you are a guest that gets interviewed for a podcast. So a podcast now can be video, it can be audio. There's a lot of different formats for it. But the key here is being a guest on someone else's podcast who's already established an audience of your ideal listeners.
So how long have you been focused on this space, or when did you start to notice the value of podcast guesting?
Because I've been in this field for so long, I started my business in 2000 and I was an early adopter of podcast guesting because I was getting invited to these emerging podcasts. I was back in the day of teleseminars before we had this technology. And so around 2009, 2010, I started getting asked to be interviewed on other people's shows. And I quickly saw how powerful this strategy is in creating what I call this compounding effect that was resulting in leads coming into my email list or into my social media. New clients were knocking, going, "Hey, I heard you on that podcast. You really spoke to me." And it also created this continuous cycle of new speaking invitations. And I was just sold because at that time I was still traveling all over the world speaking. And I thought, wow, I can do speaking, but I don't actually have to leave my home. I don't have to leave my office, but I can still reach people all over the world.
Well, then, if you could kind of quantify for somebody that were to jump into this and start being interviewed on a lot of podcasts, what would be the results that they could expect from that?
Well, I think there's no one quota or typical ROI type thing. Like you have to really think about a lot of the factors. And I think this is why a lot of people jump into podcast guesting because they think, great, I'm getting in front of new audiences. I can attract leads or I can get people to buy my book, but they don't have all their right components in place. So they end up getting crickets instead of clients coming in. And so here's what I would say. I think depending on your stage of growth, what your goal is for the exposure. If you want to be interviewed, you definitely need to think about maybe getting on 3 to 4 podcasts a month minimum. If you want to really grow quickly, you want to get 5 to 10 a month. So let's talk about potential results. So if you have really nailed your topic, you have a magnetic, powerful, compelling topic. It's really clear. And you know the right audience it needs to be in front of. And you've done a good job of vetting the shows and picking shows or pitching shows that are where your audience is. And you optimize your delivery, meaning you can do what I call building a golden thread. You can share stories and compelling content and give great insights into your whatever your expertise is. You should, at a minimum, see people starting to enter your audience. Many of my clients will see a minimum of 10, but upwards of 20 to 30. One of my clients who was a 7-figure earner with a really big profile, like she was starting to see 100, 200 people come in from a podcast interview. You should be seeing more social media followers. And if you learn how to really engage with people in the interview, you would be able to start to see people going, "Hey, I heard you on the show. So by the way, if you hear me right now on this show, come find me on YouTube here or in Facebook or LinkedIn or on Substack and say, 'Hey, I heard you on the show,' so that we know that this is working," right? So that's how you might do it. But the premium is you should be attracting leads. You want somebody, I call this a content ecosystem. You want somebody to say, "Oh my gosh, I heard Melanie on that show," or "I heard Janet on that show," or Charlie or whoever. And I now have gone and I've read their LinkedIn. I've downloaded their free report. Oh, I see they're having a webinar. Now I'm sitting in on the webinar because there's something here for me. And whether they reach out immediately or they enter your content ecosystem, the interview is like the top of funnel. It pulls them in and inspires them to want more. And that's where your job is to build a ecosystem that touches them over and over and over again with new content, reinforcing your message, but then giving them a reason to say yes to working with you.
Okay, so now let's talk about the question that's on everyone's mind. Like you mentioned kind of applying or reaching out to different podcast hosts. How do you do that? How do you get on shows like this?
Well, I think there's three key ways that people, well, actually, maybe even four right now, but we don't have time to get into all of them. But the key ones are you pitch or you hire somebody to pitch you. We do pitch for our guests, or sorry, our clients on podcasts when they get their materials together. They can rely on waiting for people to invite them. And unless you've kind of built your authority profile and you have content out there, that might take a while, but that is one strategy. The third is from collaboration. And I'm a huge fan of being in the right communities and being a collaborator, hosting your own shows so you can say, hey, I've got a show, you've got a show. Do you want to maybe swap shows and share content on each other's platforms as a way to start to activate a really powerful potential long-term collaboration where you complement each other's work? So I think all three of those work, but I just want to say the one thing that will make or break that any of those three, and that is you need to have a topic that's fresh and unique and relevant to the show's audience. I can't tell you how many people pitch me to be on my show with a topic that makes no sense for my podcast. And I'm like, yeah, that's not bookable. That's not going to fit here. So don't waste your time on shows that there is no fit. Really know your audience, know who needs what you do, and make sure that topic is dialed in.
So what I'm hearing is that there's a few steps to this. One is maybe several steps combined in one, but you really need to have your messaging ironed out, and the way that you help people is very, very clear. Your methodologies are very, very clear, and you know how to articulate that. You can really talk well to that subject so that you can be interviewed. And then the second thing is really finding the best fits, finding those podcasts or shows that are a really good fit that you can provide value to that audience. When you mentioned to really be successful with this, do 5 or 10 interviews a month, I'm like, wow, I can't even wrap my head around how I would organize that. So I guess that's why you'd look into a service.
And by the way, I could easily be doing 5 to 10 interviews a month because I get that many invitations. I don't need to do that kind of bandwidth right now. If you want to grow quickly, do 5 or 10 a month. If you are sustaining and you're wanting to kind of build momentum, you can do 2, 3, 4. This is really personal and it gets dialed into what do you want to accomplish. If you're on a book tour and you're selling your books, you're going to want to ramp it up. If you're just maintaining and you just want to keep a drip of new leads, new connections, fresh eyes on new content, do 2 or 3.
What type of businesses would benefit the most from this type of approach?
I think any business that wants exposure to ideal clients can benefit. Again, that key is to be able to dial it in. Look, there are so many different kinds of podcasts. You do a subject matter search, you can literally find a podcast for anything. Now, the key is, are your ideal clients listening to podcasts? If you're wanting to attract clients, then definitely need to make sure that the podcast, the shows that you're saying yes to are in a platform where your ideal clients are consuming content. That's why it's important to know, is it more YouTube shows? Do you want to maybe lean into Substack and what's happening there? Do you want to, be in on a LinkedIn show, right? So knowing where your ideal clients consume content helps you decide what kind of shows are the right ones for me to be a guest on.
So I've got a fun question for you to wrap this up here. So for any thought leader or subject matter expert that's watching this, what advice or opinion would you say to somebody who is not yet doing podcast guesting?
Start. There is no better way to build momentum around your work in the world, to get known and really position your subject matter expertise and build that thought leadership, than to get that message spread into new audiences. I'll tell you a quick story. When I rebooted my brand in 2010, I had been known for something for 10 years up until that point, and I was shifting gears. I was going a slightly different direction. And so I did a huge podcast tour. It only took a few shows being shared to my community and to the new communities that my hosts were hosting me in for everyone to get what I was doing. And I built up buzz and momentum around it. So I think whether you are a new thought leader, you're wanting to grow the reach of your work in the world, wherever you are, being a guest on the right shows is fuel for your brand and your business.
That was awesome. I really appreciate you're taking the time to share your expertise here. Now, I know that you have a free resource. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I get asked a lot of times, Melanie, why does my podcast guesting not convert? Why am I not seeing invitations come in? Why am I not seeing leads or clients knocking on my door and I'm just seeing crickets? And typically there's one of 17 mistakes that somebody's making. They're very unconscious. It's just like the thing you don't know what you don't know until you take my 17 mistakes quiz and you get your score. And it'll help you really look at where do you need to strengthen your prowess, your message, your delivery, your mechanics so that you can get better results. So if you go to melaniebenson.com/Nate, you can get the scorecard as my gift to you. I highly recommend you download it, take the quiz real fast, score yourself, and really look at focusing on 2 to 3 things you can improve before you do your next interview.